All right.
Hey, how you doing? Sir. Hector emailed us, so just one minute.
Okay, I'll take a look.
He's gonna contact all those.
All right, he's gonna do it?
Yeah, you know, I kind of told him the same thing, but I think they thought it would be a good idea too.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem.
All right, you guys ready? Quicker we get started, quicker we get done.
I've got my coffee. You can start.
We'll call this meeting to order. This is the City Council's subcommittee known as Finance. My name is Joe McGiverin. To my right is Mike Sullivan, City Councilor at Large. To my immediate left is Jim Leahy, City Councilor at Large, followed by Peter Tallman, City Councilor at Large. We have an aggressive agenda this evening, all important, and we're going to try to get through it as quickly as possible. Everything is important from what we hear in testimony. I do ask, though, because of the length of the agenda, that we can be as concise as possible. It would help our getting out of here sometime today and not tomorrow morning. There are no minutes on the agenda, so the chair will go to item number 1.
Make a motion to take it off the table.
Motion made second to remove from the table item number 1, filed under my name, was the request of transfer for $275,874 from the Stabilization Fund to Capital Outlay Motor Vehicles.
Just ask a question, how much do we have in the stabilization fund now?
On the motion to remove from the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. The last number I heard in stabilization and counting, because it does earn money, was 10 million plus.
Oh, okay.
With us from the police department, gentlemen, come on in. Our new chief, Captain Pratt and Sergeant Hart. This was originally laid on the table back in June. I've had city councilors tell me we passed it. I've had other city councilors tell me there were questions we were waiting for. So if we could just kind of start from the beginning.
Thank you, sir.
And I think although we do know the issue of motor vehicles and cruisers, I think it's always good to hear an update on the fleet and talk about the reasons why we should be replacing at least, 3 to 4 of these on an annual basis. Chief, did you want to lead off, or?
Sure, just quickly, I mean, like you said, I think we all know the importance of having a good, safe cruiser fleet, especially the line cars. Certainly the goal would be to, at some point, get back onto a regular cycle of purchasing cruisers. I think like 4 a year, 4 every 12 to 18 months would be good. I think we used to get 6 cruisers every 12 to 18 months. One of the things I like to point out too is we haven't bought in years is admin cars, detective cars, and vice squad, things like that. We used to do is when we were on a regular cycle, we'd be able to take, one out of the 6 or 2 out of the 6, and depending upon the condition of the fleet, put 2 of them brand new right into the Detective Bureau. We haven't done that in years. We've been repurposing the line cars by painting them, removing the cages, things like that for the last probably almost decade now, and it's not working out too well for us. But these are hard miles, so by the time a cruiser gets 100,000 miles, we can rip the cage out and paint it and give it to the Detective Bureau, but the maintenance and upkeep goes up. I'd like to draw your attention to that handout that you got. And
Okay.
here's one of the problems in the urgency that we have now is MHQ is going to a new model. It's a hybrid model. And they don't have a verbal commitment to it. They don't need money, but they need a number from us of how many we plan to purchase by, it looks like the 21st of this month, which I know is almost impossible to give them that, but each vehicle is going to go up $5,000. And not only is it going to go up $5,000 per vehicle, but then those parts are not going to be interchangeable with the other models currently that we usually pull parts on as they get older and kind of interchange parts. So it's just going to be a much steeper hill to climb moving forward. Thank you.
Chief, just explain MSQ.
That's MHQ, that's where we get that's the state contractor where I think most of the municipalities get their police cars from. Right now, I believe Marcotte is working on getting in the state contract to be able to get cruisers from them sometime in the future, which would be a lot more convenient for us.
So you deal directly through MHQ, not through Marcotte?
Correct. Well, we do some business with Marcotte for repairs and things like that, but to purchase the cruisers, right now, MHQ is, they're where we go from. We've been going there since I've been on.
And the new model, can you explain us?
It's, I was basically had the conversation with Officer Holbrook this morning. He basically said it's a hybrid model and different parts. They won't be interchangeable with the models that we have now. It's the 2020 that makes the big change. And right now we can order the 19s.
Well, are you saying the city is going to commit to the new model or stay with the existing one?
I think, well, eventually our next round, we're going to have to commit because there's going to be no other models for sale. But we would like to commit, at least let them know that we want to order 6 cars as a number before the 21st. If we do that, then they will back order them for us and we'll be kind of locked in.
David, do you want to add anything, or John?
No, I just wanted to, if he wasn't going to catch on that, those 19s are really important because all the years we currently have, we can interchange those parts on the 19s. If we go to the 20s, we won't. And the 20s are going to be $5,000 more a car, so it'll be another $30,000 if you go to the 20s.
John? Councilor Leahy?
Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming down here, and I'm all in favor of this. My question, though, is probably not to you guys. It's probably to us sitting here. Usually we go through free cash and not stabilization for these types of purchases. Why is it coming out of stabilization? Do we know?
That's what the mayor submitted. I have no explanation. The mayor is not here.
Yeah. So, I'm all in favor of this. However, the stabilization is the pot that it's like your savings account, your personal house, that type of thing. And you try not to spend it at all. However, I do also have to say, I was talking to an officer. It was probably a long time ago now. It was probably maybe about a year ago or so. And his biggest concern, he said, it was probably even longer than a year ago. His two biggest concerns, and I think John and I, we've gone through this, is if God forbid anything happened to this person. And it wasn't my brother or brothers. We really don't talk much, but it was God forbid something happened. It would either be because of the radios, or the vehicles. And people do not realize that these vehicles are going 24/7, 365 days a year. It's a lot of hours on these cars. And, every now and then when I see a police car, I look down and see how many lug nuts are on it and that sort of thing. And I do understand that these cars are just getting, utilized, and they're more utilized than any other vehicle in the city of Holyoke. So we do need to replace them, but my biggest concern is what pot do we take it out of? That doesn't concern you guys. You guys don't care about that. You guys just say, give me the cars. And that's what you guys should say. It's just on this side of the table, we just got to make sure that we have enough money to go around. So that's kind of my editorial and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen, for coming in. And I think the importance of vehicles, no matter where the money's coming from, is the safety of the citizens and our police department itself. And, you know, years ago, we would do that. We'd get every year or two, we'd get 2 or 3 vehicles, and that's been going away. So this does seem a lot at one time. But I know that because we haven't had that purchase of vehicles, I think the last time was a couple of years ago. I think we might have done 3. That, you know, with the amount of vehicles, the miles that these vehicles put on a yearly basis, not just on a daily basis, that there's a need for this right now. And with the new vehicles, I see that with the hybrids, I think it's important that we try to get this, as you stated, because they won't be interchangeable with the other vehicles to get these going right now. So I'm in favor of this, and I just hope that, you know, I think it came from stabilization, I think, because we don't know what the free cash is right now. It's early in the year. It's not really certified, I believe, yet. So that's probably the only place we had to take it from as of now. So hopefully we can pass this tonight and bring this to the full council, because time-wise, I think, is of the essence. You say the 21st, and if we don't get it in by then the cost goes up. So I'm very much in favor of this for the safety of our citizens and our police department.
Councilor Sullivan?
I guess this would be a question for the chair. If we take it out of stabilization, could we require that it be taken back out of free cash as soon as it's certified?
We can request that, but there's no guarantee that will take place. Only the mayor could, once this free cash is reappropriated, only the mayor could designate it to be put back in.
Even if we made that a term of a condition?
We cannot do any terms or any amending of any financial appropriations in front of us. We can only vote them up or down. I think what you're hearing is, and this, just for the record, was filed at the end of last fiscal year. It stayed here because stabilization doesn't go away, although free cash at the end of the fiscal year goes away. Reminding everyone at the end of the fiscal year, we were scraping pennies with free cash to take care of a lot of things, and there was not enough left in June to handle this bill. Understanding, I agree with my colleagues, understanding, and I'm a firm believer in replacing the fleet on an annual basis. If we let it go, we found out in the past, trying to get by on 2 or 3 years, or God forbid 4 or 5 years, then you have to replace the entire fleet. 4 seems to be manageable, but we haven't done anything for a year and a half now. So 6 is a reasonable request. I think we've got the answers, the anticipated answers for questions from the full city council. You might want someone show up on Tuesday night. I think the real issue, or if there are any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. But the real issue is going to be using stabilization, and we'll do our best to make that argument. It's not that stabilization is known as the rainy day fund. Our budget is tight. We can make the arguments, but if we use stabilizations for daily costs of government, it doesn't sit well with our bond raters on Wall Street. And we have to be careful to make the arguments that this is a one-time emergency type purchase, as opposed to the daily operations of the city and of your budget. But that's a decision that the full city council will have to make. Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, a couple of one observation is it's not an emergency. It strikes me as an opportunity to save some money in the long run and have some vehicles available with interchangeable parts also that we won't have in the future, and save some money. So I think there's a big difference between an opportunity and an emergency, and we ought to be able to take advantage of opportunities as well that present themselves. we've got a price here, total cost per unit of roughly $46,000. Then the total cost of $276. That seems to be just the cost for 1 times 6. There's no bargain or anything for making the larger purchase, or?
Well, the vehicles prices, I believe, are set by state contract, and I don't think there's negotiations or anything like that. Like, that's the price, and my understanding is they're on like back order now. So it's, even if we get the thumbs up like right here tonight, it's gonna be a while before we actually get those in, and on the road. But yeah, no, the base price is the base price, and then we outfit it with radios, laptops, computers, things like that. And then we end up with that almost $46,000 a piece price. I don't think it's set by the state.
Yep, you answered my question. Thanks.
Chief, just to clarify, thumbs up here is good, but before you get a purchase order, you need a thumbs up from the full city council.
Oh, I'm very clear with that.
I thought you were. You're no rookie. You might be a new chief, but. Any other questions? Councilor Leahy.
Just kind of to piggyback with the chief said, to answer Michael's question is, so when, like Marcotte, for instance, they go out and they want to get the state contract, they're giving a discount in there to get this contract. And so when you look at these numbers, if it was any one of us going in to buy one of these vehicles, it would be much higher than $39,000. So that, I mean, so the taxpayer at home, they can, rest assured that they're getting the best bang for their buck. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to pass the financial transfer of $275,874 from stabilization to capital.
Motion has been made and seconded that this committee recommends to the full city council to pass the request of $275,874 from stabilization to capital outlay motor vehicles for the purchase of 6 police cruisers. On that motion, is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Gentlemen, if we could keep you in those seats, or someone. Item 2, motion to take off the table.
Take a motion off. Can't read it though.
Number 2. Motion to take item 2 off the table.
Okay, it's filed, it's a Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, Byrne's Justice Assistance Grant, authorizes the establishment of the fund appropriate accounting of receipts and expenditures of all resources with this said administrative grant. Motion removed from the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe this came through, John, through the police department?
Yes, it did. It's a 2017 Byrne grant. It was backlogged from the sanctuary cities delay, but it's come through and we've been approved for it, and we've been awarded $34,318. And of that, we plan to get 15 bulletproof vests, 20 computers, a few paper shredders, and a 65-inch smart TV with installation and stuff for our training room and roll call room to conduct our in-service training.
Make a motion to approve it.
Second, motion made and second to approve. Any matching funds?
No match on
You say computers, you're talking about laptops for the cruisers or
no,
for?
inside the station.
Okay.
We have almost 100 computers in there, so.
Best computers, paper shredder, and what was the last one?
Smart TV.
That's not for the NFL games, is it?
Negative.
Okay. Any further discussion? Motion to accept and recommend to City Council that the City Council accept this grant of $34,318. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Passes 4-0. I believe that's it. Nice, thank you. Chief, thank you.
Be safe.
Item number 3.
Make a motion to take it off the table.
Item number 3 was a communication we received last year from the water departments. We've been asked by the manager and the Board of Water Commissioners for the opportunity to meet with the Holyoke City Council to discuss various financial matters concerning the Holyoke Water Works, including the decline of water consumption usage upon composing, also upcoming proposed capital improvement projects and the adoption of a proposed rate increase per gallons by 2 cents. The rate increase is scheduled to go into effect in July of 2018. Other topics of discussion include the sewer billing service and shut-off program, the payment of the lieu of tax pilot program, and the carbon project. This was received by the City Council back in August, our August meeting, and this is the between the Water Department and this board, this committee, the first time we've had a chance to get together. We welcome the commissioners and our manager, Mr. Conti. Seats are not hot yet. Please take them. Twice in 1 week, Mark, I know.
No need to be.
To our left is our newest commissioner, the baby of the commissioners, but no baby to the works of the reservoirs, and certainly a lot of experience. Bill Harbless, Mark Nadoff, we learned the other night, is celebrating, we won't say how many decades on the Water Commission. And our manager, who is celebrating over 3 decades on the Water Department, and certainly is not going to submit that retirement letter until we allow him to. And I apologize, we have a new face here. Eileen, welcome. Thank you. Could you just spell that last name for me?
Buttrick.
Just like it sounds, right? David, did you want to lead us off on this? It's your communication.
Sure. So, thank you for seeing us today. You're all aware that back in 1992, we started a series of projects that involved the construction of a water treatment plant, a transmission main, storage tanks, and pumping stations. And those projects were finished, completed, and put into activation in 1997. And as a result, there was a 20-year bond in the order of almost $22 million. Now, those bond payments have matured, and now the department is in a position to look at all the deficiencies that we have been made aware of, or we have, learned of over that period of time. But because of the cost, and because the commissioners and the city council wanted to keep water rates competitive, we pushed off these projects until the bond matured. So now we're in a position to bring these projects before you and talk about undertaking them. So what we did was we've identified deficiencies in the system, not just in the distribution system, but in the treatment and storage of our treated water. So we prioritize the projects based on high priority, medium priority, and low priority. High priority, we feel, are essential to undertaking because of the importance of these projects. Medium priority deals with deficiencies that can be put off, but we still feel are important in the low priority projects too. We wanted to make sure that we've identified all these projects because, somebody coming in after me or after this commission will be aware of these projects instead of having to learn them as you go. But the other reason why we classified them in 3 categories, we wanted to be sensitive to rates, water rates. I know the city council and the commissioners are always sensitive to rates, so what we did was, based on these priority projects, we also want to show the impact to the consumer, how it's going to affect water rates, and then we'll also talk about what we're doing in other forms of generating revenue other than raising rates or fees. So Darlene is the expert with regards to the projects. We have some handouts for you. If you don't mind, I'll let her walk you through it.
Still weightlifting, I see, huh?
Thank you.
Okay.
Darlene, I
so-
just want to say one quick comment and welcome again, as we talked about the 30-plus years of experience here. I would have been around for this meeting 30 years ago myself, and Mr. Sheridan would have been sitting in your seat. So you have some big shoes to fill.
All right, well, with that introduction, so like Dave said, we've been working with them to develop this list of projects. And right now, the focus for the next few years is going to be these high priority projects. So in the packet that he handed to you, we have a summary of what some of those projects are. So just flipping through, one of the first projects that we have on the list is repainting of the water storage tanks. These are,
Can I just ask you, so
Sure.
are you going in order of the high priority, middle priority, and low priority? So this is the
correct,
highest
yeah.
priority?
So in this packet, it's a summary of the high priority projects. There also are a lot of water main replacements, but since they're water main replacements, there's nothing really fancy to show about them, but we can discuss those as well, and we have a map here that we can show you where those are located. But so the first high priority project is repainting of the large water storage tanks. They have 3 million gallon tanks and 2 million gallon tanks. Those are the high service and low service tanks that feed the system. So this is exterior recoating of these tanks. And feel free to hop in with any questions.
So are these at Whiting, or are these at McLean, or where are these located?
These are at the treatment plant.
Treatment
site.
plant?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
these are
these-
actually holding the water that we drink out of now?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep. The high service tanks and the low service tanks are all within that area of the treatment plant. So the photos that we have here, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about in terms of what the tanks look like right now. So there's a few photos in here of the condition. Right now, the project will be just a new exterior coating. We had a tank specialist, coating specialist come out and look at it, and the primer is still in good enough condition to not need to completely replace the coating all the way down to bare steel. So it's a great time to get in, do the top coat, saves a lot of costs. If this kind of project got put off, if that was the question, really what just happens is there's an example here of like one spot where the primer is gone. You get more and more spots like that to the point where you need to recoat the entire tank down to bare steel, which is a much bigger endeavor and a more costlier endeavor.
Can I ask you a dumb question?
Sure.
How do you choose that aqua blue type of color? Like, does it matter what color you guys choose?
You can pick any color.
Not that I want to pick them.
Yeah, some people put fancy graphics on there and logos, but usually I think the blue is because it kind of blends in with the sky and.
Typically, it's a very light color because of the fading. We've chosen light green because it's in a forest area or wooded area, as opposed to light blue. But it's either light blue or light green. That's what you typically see.
Last time they were painted, Mark told me it was your favorite color, David.
And we're all familiar with the tanks coming out of Boston from the 93. You got two.
You're right.
Any
No.
favorite designs you want?
No.
Maybe you can look like a biology.
Let's just be ourselves. Darlene, sorry.
Nope, that's fine. So that was one of the first projects that we were looking at. Another project here is the replacement of the Whiting Street Reservoir spillway. The Whiting Street Reservoir dam is a high hazard dam, and the spillway is in poor condition. In addition, it's also the only dam that the water department owns that's a high hazard that is not able to pass the state required half probable maximum flood. So this project would address the condition of the spillway and also the deficiency in its ability to pass that design flood.
Darling, on this project, because we met the other night for a different reason, but it came up, can you just go through the importance of the residential neighborhood and this dam and the importance that we don't want to breach it, David, I think is the correct way to say it, but we also have to protect it, maintain it to protect the neighborhood?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the primary reasons that the dam is classified as a high hazard dam is because if the dam were to fail, it could result in loss of life. That's how the state, characterizes a high hazard dam. So, the importance of maintaining the dam so that it would not result in a failure situation is there because of that potential for loss of life. And so in terms of the deficiencies in the spillway, right now, because of the poor condition, the water department actually maintains it at a lower elevation than what they would have in the past. And that's to really make sure that at most times there's no water flowing over the spillway, because that continued movement of water over the spillway would just further deteriorate it. That's usually the way that happens is there's a low-level outlet or a pipe that is used to drain the water out of the reservoir. And that is usually sufficient for day-to-day flows. The problem is that most low levels are not, sufficient for a major water event. So in that situation, you would have water flowing over not only the spillway, but because it's undersized, over the dam itself in the half probable maximum flood. So now you have a situation where you have water flowing over an earthen embankment, which will quickly erode and could lead to a failure of the dam.
And just so there's no confusion, Whiting Street is, although it's offline, it is considered still part of our reservoirs, is the reservoir that is by, I call it the former mountain park.
Yes.
Okay. Some people, I think, because the other reservoir has a similar name that we used to have out above. Yeah, some people get confused. But it's still important, and it's still our responsibility to maintain it.
Correct. Yep. So that was project 3, and then there are just a few photos that we put in here just of the current condition of that spillway. So the next project that we have on here is improvements to the McLean Reservoir Gatehouse. So the Ty-Carmody Reservoir, as you know, is the primary source of supply, and McLean supplements the Ty-Carmody primarily in the summer months for water quality. However, if there were ever an issue with the Ty-Carmody supply or the water main that feeds the treatment plant, the McLean becomes the primary backup. Generally, the flows coming from McLean are lower, and the screening system that's there can handle that, but at high flows, the screens are not capable of handling that. They start bending and buckling, so they have to remove the screens in those situations, and so large debris and so forth can pass through the system. So this project would basically upgrade that screening system to screens that can handle the higher flows in those situations, as well as safety improvements for the operators for removal of the screens, cleaning the screens, and so forth. Any questions on that one?
Just what does sluice mean?
A sluice, that's a type of gate. It's basically like a big square piece of metal that can slide up and down.
And just, I always get this mixed up, David, but Darlene, McLean is our backup emergency reservoir in town, in city,
It's actually classified as an active supply.
active supply. But we pump right into the distribution center from Ty-Carmody.
Correct.
And McLean.
In McLean, we do use
Yes.
McLean then, okay.
Yes. Yep.
And also McLean actually feeds Bears Hole in West Springfield?
Yes.
Okay. Not that we're supplying them, but it's natural springs and runoff that was always there. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, you bring up a good point that in addition to Ty-Carmody and McLean.
I forgot to tell you,
Ashley-
we're on TV and we're live, and
That's
we have an
fine.
audience that has probably got a lot of questions at home.
Absolutely.
We want to keep their answers,
Yeah.
keep their questions answered too.
Yeah, so Ty-Carmody and McLean are the primary active supplies. Ashley and Whiting Street are backup supplies. And so, if there were an issue with the transmission main from Ty-Carmody, for example, the quantity of water that we can take from McLean is not sufficient to supply the city. So we would need to take water from Ashley and or McLean, or from Whiting Street. So that's why even though they're not typically used, but they're classified as emergency, they would be there for an emergency situation.
And just to make one point, we did have one failure of the pipeline already, the 42-inch pipeline. We had a failure in one of the valves, and it required us to shut the line down and repair it. And that's when we noticed, or when it came to our attention, that the McLean Gatehouse could not handle the capacity to properly service the city. So that's why we want to make sure we make those improvements, because if we do have another problem in the future, we're not gonna be faced with the issues that we were.
42 inches, huh? That's, wow, big pipe.
Okay. So the next project that we have on here is 500,000 gallon water storage tank. This is for the West Holyoke system. Right now, there's one single steel water storage tank for the West Holyoke system. It's in need of repairs on the interior and exterior, and also safety repairs. But right now, the department's unable to do those repairs because you need to take the tank offline to do that. There was always the thought of and the plan to have an additional tank for this system. However, obviously for a variety of reasons, that was never constructed. So this is addressing that deficiency. There are summer capacity issues in that system as well. So in addition to the repair issues that need to be addressed for that tank, this would also address the capacity issues and provide redundancy for that system, that part of the system.
How large is that tank?
It's 500,000 gallons.
Well, it's right off 202, right on Upland Highway. That's the tank we're talking about. And there's only one there.
You see it?
Well, if you take a right, you can see it, but there's only one tank, and in all the other situations, there's two. So we can always take one offline if we need to do repairs or there's a problem with it. This is the only one left in the system that is a solo tank, yeah.
Thank you.
So those are the primary projects that are in the high priority category that are not water main replacements. The remainder of the projects that we have on the list here, so this is a list here that we provided with color codes. So the yellow projects are the high priority projects. And then on the next page, the blue is the medium priority projects, and then the green are the low priority.
Mind if I jump in?
Sure.
Are any of these, the yellow ones, the most important ones, are any of these, as David just said earlier, we had a failure, or any of these that you'd be driving home tonight thinking, one of these could fail?
I mean, I'll let Dave answer that, but
Let me help you with that. I just happen to have.
Show and tell.
hurricanes.
And that's in good shape.
That's in good shape?
That's in really good shape.
Let's explain to us what we're looking at.
You're looking at an 8-inch water main and what it looks like inside after 100 years.
That's 8 inch?
8 inch.
So that 41 you're talking about?
42 inch is a big one.
Yeah.
So the list of water main improvement projects that we have here on high priority, what we were trying to focus on was all the water mains that are 4 inches in size. There's a few 6-inch water mains, but the industry standard now for a traditional main in a road is to put an 8-inch water main in for fire flow capacity. So in most of these situations, not only are they extremely old, but they also cannot adequately provide fire flow for those areas.
So what Michael just showed us, is this, what's inside of it? Is that rust? Is that?
Tuberculation. Yeah, so it's
So layman, explain that to me.
in lay terms, it's a accumulation over hundreds of years of tiny little particles of debris and
Black in there.
stuff.
So it's like cholesterol tape.
Cholesterol tank.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And so, to go back to your question of, do you go to bed at night? I mean, I think that probably Dave is the one that has more problems than I do, but, yeah, certainly, especially with these mains that are only 4 inches in size, that are very old. And, they've been finding lately, the Ductile Iron Pipe Association, who does a lot of reports on condition and failures, they're finding that they used to think that failure was linear with age. So as the pipe aged, the risk of failure was a linear progression. But they're finding now with a lot of the failures that it's becoming more exponential. So the older and older it gets, the more exponentially at risk you are for failure. And then in addition to that, one of the things that can really tax a pipe will be, say, a fire flow situation where you have a lot higher flow than it's used to seeing going through it. And then you have a failure at the worst time that you could possibly imagine because you're trying to fight a fire. So it really presents a high risk for these smaller mains that are throughout the city.
35 years ago, Mr. Sheridan was sitting in a seat over here. And what he told us was, and I grew up near the Sheridan house, which was on Essex Street. I grew up on Beach Street. Joe, our water is the best, but in the morning, very early when you get up, make sure you run your tap water before you use it.
Yep,
And I think-
that's still true today.
When you're near the older lines, I think that's the explanation. Once the water's flowing, it's not picking this stuff up. But when it's stagnant, there's a different story.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, our water is not as aggressive as it was back then because we do pH adjustment and alkalinity adjustment, so we don't have those issues, that corrosive nature that they had prior to the construction of the treatment plant.
Yeah.
We also add a phosphate, which provides a coating inside the pipe to more or less seal a lot of that tuberculation, so every time there's a draw on the line, you don't get a lot of material breaking loose.
Now, I don't know where Councilor Sullivan got this piece, but is there a leak somewhere in the city right now?
Where do you get that?
By the canal.
Councilor Sullivan?
Just, I think this is a little question, but as far as fire prevention stuff too, where they think they're getting the flow from an 8-inch main, is it safe to say they're getting a 6-inch? And where they think they've got a 6-inch hydrant, they've got a 4-inch, and you try to hook 3 hoses up to that, you're not going to get what you expect at the scene of the fire either, are you?
No, that's absolutely right, yeah.
The majority of these mains, the 4-inch mains, have no fire protection on them because we cannot connect the fire hydrant to them. So you've cut, you don't have even a 2-inch opening in there. So that's why we wanted to focus as high priority on eliminating all the 4-inch or most of the 4-inch in the system.
I'd
So
like to just add, I was gonna say, we just want to add that we have worked with the fire department, closely with the fire department, to identify the hydrants that have sufficient water to fight fires. So if they arrive at the scene and they can tell immediately whether it's a bad hydrant or a good one in terms of its flow.
Chief Pond knows all this.
They are completely aware of that.
Good.
But the public's probably seeing a lot of hydrants out
So
there.
that's
that are-
important for homeowners and for insurance companies in order to set values for insurance plans.
Yeah.
Okay, so over here we have a large size map, if you're interested in taking a look at it, just where these projects are located throughout the city, the water main replacement projects.
The reason I even started asking the question, so is there any asterisks that you want to put down now that's saying, Jim, before you go home tonight, this is something you need to, we need to vote on this? I mean, or are they all the yellow ones?
I mean, I think that's what we try to do. Yeah, we really tried hard to see what we could move to blue, and, I mean, there were like 3 or 4 long meetings where we were trying to do that, and we just,
Oh, it's good to know, thank you.
so, yeah, this is it.
First of all, everything that's on this list needs to be done.
Yeah.
All right, it's just, we recognize that rates are, key to everybody's concern. So we try to take all of the projects that need to be done and then prioritize those in terms of what's absolutely necessary. For example, we talked about Whiting Street at the last meeting. But just to continue with that, the state comes in and examines Whiting Street, the dam, every year. And this year, we got in their report, they started to escalate the amount of effort they're going to make the water department put into maintaining that dam. So as they increase their efforts, we have to produce more work to keep them up to standards. So those things that the DEP wants done first are in this list. Those things that are important to the system in general are high on the list. And then we take it literally one at a time, and we went through every one of them to consider which layer it involved in. But if we had our druthers, we'd love to do it all, is what I'm guessing.
And Mike, to your point earlier, we had 4-inch pipe up at Cobble Mountain that we had to replace, and when we cut it and we took it apart, we almost couldn't see through it. Over all the years, it just keeps closing in, and
Well,
it can really cause a problem.
that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's why it's a great point.
Right. And it's not only a drinking water issue, it's a public safety issue as well. So.
Commissioner Harbo's worked for the Springfield system, I guess. Bill, is that
For 28 years, I
28
up at
years.
Cobble Mountain.
Double Mountain?
We used to see this, and it's kind of scary when you need that pipe for cooling, and all of a sudden it's not cooling, and you cut that pipe, and then you see why it's not cooling, because there's no water going through it. So it's important. That's a great thing to bring, Mike.
I think a lot, 99% of the public never gets to see something like
Oh, I
this,
know.
and I know a lot of the council members don't get, it's a great theory to talk about, but to actually see what goes on inside to do a colonoscopy on the city, so to speak.
It's important to recognize that when we get down into the actual pipes in the ground, that it's not any one area. We have covered different spots throughout the city so that everybody's gonna get some benefit from the projects that we're gonna do.
Well, and a big reason I had asked that question, I'm glad Michael showed this, is because I know that you guys were very adamant about the project that we had down the street, about making sure we had new pipes and not connecting, because you guys were very concerned, and I was concerned about sinkholes. Because God forbid one of these collapsed, then everything collapsed. And then we have, Mrs. Jones not driving down the street, and it won't be good for us.
Great point.
Darlene, are you done with the presentation as far as,
Yeah,
before we
well-
start talking about financing?
Yeah, so I was gonna just start talking about that now, about the costs.
If I can ask a question before?
Sure.
Okay, that's the important part, I think so. And I'm not sure if everybody understands, I kind of like it, it's a good paperweight, I think it's a good reminder of what we're really doing here, and then, yes, it's gonna cost some money, but the importance of protecting our biggest asset, which is I think the city of Holyoke can safely say is our water, maybe first or second to our municipal gas and electric. But before we get into the finances, I just wanted to ask a question to lead into it. I think we should have said this in the beginning, but tie and bond, the city is contracted with since the beginning. And I know that because as a young boy, I went over to Mr. Sheridan's house, and all the blueprints of these maps like that were in his dining room table. Rumor has it they're still somewhere in that house, but Jaime Seidel told me we got most of them back.
Can you just let the people know who are about 40 years younger than you, who Mr. Seidel is?
Mr. Seidel founded Tie and Bond. Tie and Bond was a Holyoke company. We still consider it a Holyoke company. We will not discuss why they moved their main headquarters to a different location, but they are an engineering firm that is well-known throughout New England, actually probably throughout the country now, but certainly well-known to the Holyoke Water Works and the importance of the entire system. When we lose people like Dave Conti and the Seidels, I think we're going to understand how important Tie and Bond is. Before we get into financing this, which I think was what the big crux of why we're here, the recent 2% rate, when was the last rate increase, David?
It was just initiated this July.
Okay. And you've always, and you've come in before us and not just justified, but verified, have always had an ongoing program annually to replace as much pipe as you can within the budget.
That's correct.
Is that still part of what you do?
Absolutely. And in addition to this is all projects that are going to be done by private contractors. But in addition to that, our crews will be out there replacing mains also. And what we are going to focus on with our crews is short streets, small streets, streets that are 300-400 feet, streets that we can undertake with our staff. These projects are beyond our capability, and that's the reason why we have to bond for them. But we will be out there continuing with capital improvements in addition to these projects if they go forward.
Okay. And if there's no questions, we can go into the financing. Darlene?
Sure. So for each of these projects, we developed an estimated project cost. Those are based on quotes from manufacturers, recent bid prices for various projects that we've been working on. They include, engineering and contingency dollars, so that's the total project cost. We believe that the numbers are somewhat conservative because you're looking at each project individually. In reality, if we do start moving forward with those, we're going to try to lump together as many projects as makes sense together for an economy of scale that you'll realize, in the construction cost. So that's how we developed the numbers. And then I guess, Dave, do you want to talk about the actual bonding for them?
Yes, okay. So we had our accountant put together some numbers as to the impact of these projects to water rates. So looking at just the high priority projects, which is estimated at $13.3 million, you're looking at an annual principal and interest payment of about $851,000, or a rate increase of 8 cents. The current rate right now is 47 cents. So you're looking at an 8-cent increase, which would bring the rate up to 55 cents, or you're looking at a rate increase of 17%. What I want to mention to you is this project, if it does go forward, is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take, from start to finish, somewhere in the order of 5 years. And what we talked about and what this commission has always done is they phased in these increases so the consumer would not get hit with a large increase. So we would assume that if we were to conduct the high priority projects, it would take 5 years. And if they were to institute that, they would have to raise rates roughly 1.5 cents every year for 5 years, or roughly the consumer would be faced with a 3% increase annually. That, looking at this project from 2018, which an average user who consumes 22,500 gallons a quarter pays $105 a quarter, he would be paying $123.75 in 2023. That's the 17% increase. So they will not realize this 17% increase till 2023 as a result of the high
The
priority.
average cost is, the average dollar amount would be how much they,
$18 a quarter they would be faced with
$18 a quarter to completely do the whole system?
in
Or
2023.
the emergency stuff?
If we were to do the high priority and the medium priority, again, it's more water main work. We can't do all this water main work in 1 year, so it would require an additional 2 more years. You're looking at 7 years from start to finish, roughly. Again, you're looking at an increase of about 1.5 pennies a year, or an increase of 3.2%. And the rates would go from 2018 to 2023 would go up to 58 cents. You're looking at a 11-cent increase, or a 23% increase. That would affect consumers in 2025, would have an increase of $25 a quarter, would realize an increase of $25 a quarter.
$100 a year.
And then if you were to look at high,
The amount of
medium,
money
and low.
we believe for the improvements that would be happening to the system.
So again, these are the projects, these are the impact to the consumers. The commission is open to your position on this, how you feel. I mean, we certainly would love to do all of it, but we understand there's a cost associated with that, and
But David, let me ask you this, so now we're off that last bond, right? You said we're off the $22 million bond.
yes,
When did that come to, when was-
matured. It matured in 2017.
Okay, oh, so just recently.
We just paid it off.
All right,
Now,
so say hypothetically, we did all the yellow and the blue. Have you talked to the mayor about this?
Yes,
yes.
Is he in favor?
he's on board.
Is he in favor with each color, all the way to the
He's
green?
on board for the whole project.
Oh, he is, okay.
So he's, kind of waiting for the board, your board to do some negotiations with us.
Oh, we can negotiate this?
Well, look, we want your input as to what's important and what's not. We can put some of this off, but it's not, we don't think it's a good idea,
Hypothetically, we say yes on this, the mayor, we go through the bonding, we do it. When will you guys be shovel ready? How soon is this happening?
With some of the simpler projects,
quickly.
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, the tank
tanks, we could
painting
go out
projects
to bid
can
on
be
the tanks
done
very, very quickly.
very soon, yeah.
David, on the high and medium, when you gave us the numbers for the high priorities, did that include the yellow pipe?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Everything.
And the 5 other projects that we talked about were the,
Yep.
Yes.
All the projects that I discussed are in the high priority,
plus the yellow.
plus all the water mains that we have listed on the list that are, majority are 4-inch water mains.
But as you asked, painting could go forward almost immediately. I would say this coming in 2019. The tank construction would take a little bit more time. There's permitting. There's different types of agencies we would have to go through. So some projects would probably be pushed off until 2020. And then the water main work would not all take place in one particular year. We would phase that in based on neighborhoods. We don't want to be disruptive throughout the entire city. So we would phase those projects in and spread them out. So start to finish, you're looking at up to 5 years for just the high priority.
So what we're looking for from the board is, to be honest, is an approval for the $24 million worth of bonding. Now, how we get the money and how often it comes and how fast it comes and when we start projects, that all can be talked about so that it can be done in a way that's both responsible and where the ratepayer doesn't get any shock from the increase in the fees.
I think that's an important point, Mark. What we have in front of us is in the communication, and what was needed is a presentation to understand where we are, and thank you for the presentation. And I think, although I don't want to call it a straw vote, what we can do next week or at the full city council meeting when we get this out is get a feeling from the body as to the importance of going forward. The questions that we're not going to be able to answer until we sit down, the mayor says yes, and we sit down, or the city sits down with bond council, is how to break it down and what it's going to turn out to be in numbers it's actually more your budget than our budget, but in terms of the cap on the city's bonding itself. Because this is not paid through our municipal budget, but through the water department budget, we worry about that, but we don't have to worry about how it impacts the budget, but it does have an impact on the overall bond situation of the city, and we have been looking at more and more answers to our capital outlay problems by bonding. So we do have to be careful. I know it's a separate, Mark, but I just wanted to point that out.
No, I totally agree.
We can do our best to get an answer. There's 13 city councilors, you need 9 of them to be in approval. And I think we can get an answer that the importance of going forward, and certainly on the high priorities, and as much as we can, because, I want my daughters and someday my granddaughters, to have some better pipes when they're drinking their water. But until the mayor puts that appropriation, that bond in front of us, it's at best a...
And as I said, the details of that, we were going to bring our auditors with us and our accountants so that to have this kind of conversation. But we really think that is, we didn't bring them, we really brought Darlene to.
I think you brought the
talk
best.
about. Yeah, there's no question. To talk about the projects themselves and the importance.
Yeah.
The finance side can be discussed as how fast it has to happen and how it impacts the city and how it impacts the department. We're just as concerned about our budget as you are yours. So that needs to be done, but it really needs to get into some hard detail, and we don't want to do that in this meeting. I don't think we want, but we do want to do it.
I agree. And I think what we're going to try and do is get this to the full city council to get some feedback to the mayor so we can then take the next step. If we can just quickly, David, Councilor Sullivan and I were, for a different reason, at the special meeting with the mayor, and we heard some of the story about the carbon agreement and the pilot and lieu of tax agreements and things of that nature. Can you run, in case there are questions next week, can you run through that for us? It is in your communication.
Do you want me to run through that right now?
Yeah, is there any questions for what we've heard so far, Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, I just had just a couple comments, and I see this has to be done, and I'm familiar with the work that's been done with the water department over the years with the pipes and certain areas of the city that, the rust has been there. We talked about Valley Heights, Taylor Street years ago, and we just had a big break up in Bemis area, that, was major, affected a good portion of the city. But my concern is with the ratepayers, and phasing this in. $100 over a year doesn't sound like a lot, but for some people, that's a lot of money. We're doing this, the CPA, and we're doing other things. And I see how, years ago when we had the increase in the sewer, it affected our water because people weren't using his water as much. And, when you go up in the rates, and I'm sure we'll see that later on with the auditors, you go up on the water rates, people even still might try to conserve more. And you need the water usage to get the money going. So, even though I know this needs to be done, we still got to remember that the ratepayers are ones paying for it, basically, in the long run. And, the idea of phasing it in, if it's a couple cents a year or something, each year to, because if you do it all at once, it's a lot of money for a lot of people. We're a poor community. And, I'm just thinking what my colleagues might be thinking. Even though the work has to be done, there was a lot of people that when the sewer went way up, from $1 something to $5.80 or whatever, people ended up not paying their sewer bill, and they're still not paying it in some cases. So, my concern is that to try to keep it in line, and if we need the work to get done, it's seen that it has to be done. Some of the things we discussed the other night have to get done with the spillway. We don't want to have a dam break, with the reservoir and have it affect lives. But we got to consider the ratepayers actually and how we're going to make it so it sort of transitions into slowly increase, year by year while these projects are getting done. So that's my concern.
As it is ours.
Councilor Sullivan?
Thank you. A couple question and a comment here. On the funding part, though, I've got a little bit of a disconnect. If we've been able to make the bond payments on $20 million on the current rate, and now that's paid off, why wouldn't just the continuation of the current rate be able to take over the payments on a new bond?
Because we had set up, back in 1997, we set up a bond reduction account, and we built that account up where we had excess money, so that when the department started operating annually in the red, we used that money to offset that shortfall. And at the end, back in 2017, there was a $800,000 a year shortfall because we were not raising rates to offset that cost.
Cost of the bonds over the 20 years.
And another reason why was conservation. We were faced with a 2%, between 1% and 2% decrease in usage every year. 1% represents $50,000. In 2017, we saw a 5% reduction in usage, which represented $250,000. If you look at our budget today and you look at our budget back in 1997, it's still below that amount. I mean, our budget really hasn't increased. We've been very fortunate to have some talented people working for us and very diverse people, and because of that, we're able to do the work with half the staff, but we're getting the work done. But that was essentially the reason why we didn't raise rates, was because we had this rainy day fund, per se, and that money was used every year to satisfy that shortfall.
To the point now where it's exhausted.
To the point now where our revenues are equaling our expenses annually.
Right. I thank you. I know we went over this
So,
once before,
just
but
if
I went over this once before with Dave. I wanted to just get this out because I knew this question will come up again, and I wanted to get out to the public so everybody understood why the rate increase was necessary when we had paid off a bond. So we've got that out on the record now also. The other observation I'd like to make is we've got a lot of new development going on in town also. We have several developers that have been affected, especially in the lower wards, when we heard from one last night also. Besides the obvious drinking water supply for the residences and the homeowners, in trying to support new development in the city also, this is what we're faced with also, people coming in and trying to connect new businesses with needs for water into old systems that can't adequately supply them, and then being faced with replacement costs and all of this as an added burden when looking at coming to the city of Holyoke. And that's the other observation I wanted to get out there, is necessity of a project like this infrastructure-wise for the city going forward.
Councilor Thomas?
Just one more brief question, and David, or Mark, if you recall, was there some help from the state government with that bond back in '92?
Yes, there was. We received $10 million from the state, and that $1 million was set aside every year.
Every year, right, and that
Every
helped
year
with
it was
the,
set aside, and that money was put there specifically so that when there was a shortfall, we wouldn't have to raise rates.
right, and that helped over the years without that, yeah, 'cause I recall that when that first came out. And is there any type of funding with these projects that you can get, or any kind of grants, or anything that you looked, again, to the state government possibly to get some help or assistance with this?
There is SRF funding, and I mean, Ty and Bond's familiar with that. It's essentially a loan. from the state.
Low
Low
interest,
interest, yeah.
2% is the rate that they're carrying right now for those loans.
So it's basically about the same thing you would get with a bond, yeah.
Yeah, certainly, we'll take a look at that. But I also wanted to mention to you that if you look on the last chart that I did give you, you look at Holyoke's rates compared to other communities, this has just been updated with our new rate increase, we're still one of the lowest in the area. So our water rates are very competitive, and a lot of these communities they're seeing are facing the same issues that we are.
Right.
Like Westfield, they're gonna see considerable increases in their rates, Chicopee, Springfield. So all these other municipal water suppliers are in the same boat as Holyoke, but we've been very fortunate to keep our rates very competitive, very competitive.
Yeah, you're all familiar with what's going on in Westfield. I know you've been paying attention to that. You know, so, and we were actively trying to sell them some water, get them on, hooked into our system. But, the cities tend to be territorial.
Right.
And that was the decision they made.
Bill, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but 28 years with Springfield, and they got the lowest rate in the area. Now you're with Holyoke, and we got the second lowest, so it's your job to keep us low.
That's something I'm good at. Yeah, it's
That's
funny
possible,
because, all the usage that, I can remember, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, on Sundays, it would be called a demand day, and that would mean that the city of Springfield would tell us, the operators, how much water they needed. If they needed 50 million gallons, 60 million gallons, and there was time where we would give them 65 to 70 million gallons of water on a Sunday, and now it's down to 20 to 25. So, I mean, the water usage, it's not just in Holyoke.
Yeah, coupled with some of the bigger users we lost too, it's also just your typical homeowner and your typical user are not using the way it used to be.
So if I can add just one thing, again, about our budget. We're roughly, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had about a $6 million budget. We're still at about $6 million. So we've been able to move and get the projects done and still maintain a good control on the budget. Much of that, by the way, I have to give credit to David for.
So, Joe, what are we looking for? Make a motion that it's to comply with?
Just because it's in the communication, real quick, David, the recent activity on the Inlua pilot and the carbon project, what the agreement was?
On the mayor had signed the carbon project. I don't know if you're familiar with the carbon project. We're going forward with that. And we anticipate generating in the order of just this is what are the projected amounts of revenue that the three communities that are involved in this project are expected to receive. And Holyoke is expected to receive just around $100,000 annually for the next 10 years. And what we met with the mayor, and what was decided, there's an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, is that the in lieu tax that we pay the city of Holyoke will remain as per the state statute of $50,000. The city of Holyoke will continue to pay the sewer shutoff and billing services fee that we send out annually of $121,000, and As a result of the city's involvement in the carbon project, they will receive the city will receive 50% of the proceeds annually if this project goes forward. That was agreed upon between the commissioners and the mayor. And I also wanted to tell this board that we've been working with the DPW on the sewer shutoff program. It's been very, very successful. And it's also proven to be beneficial for our department because when we shut people off for non-payment of sewer, in order for them to get their water turned on, they have to be current with their water charges. So, to date, with just services that were shut off for non-payment of sewer, the DPW has generated $36,000 in 4 months. That's accounts that were shut off. That doesn't include the revenue that they generated from accounts being posted. So it's been successful for them, and we have, as a result of that, generated somewhere in the order of $30,000 also. So, and that runs concurrently with our shut-off program. So it's been working very well. I'm sure Mike McManus is going to have some numbers for you at the end of the year so that you'll know how beneficial this program's been for the city.
And I'd just like to commend you and the commissioners. Like I said earlier, Mike and I attended a meeting where you had the mayor in, and I went in, after I heard what was on the agenda, I said, I don't think it was fair that the mayor was looking for a portion of the carbon profits. But after hearing the city argument and listening to the water commissioners, I think that was a very fair compromise, and I think everybody wins if the project is successful.
I think the mayor was very persuasive.
They tend to be, Mark, but, we know who really runs the city, but
Yeah, you guys.
don't say that loud. We don't want to upset them. Okay, is there anything else? Chair will entertain a motion perhaps that the order is complied with a recommendation that we move forward.
I make a motion to comply with the recommendation, we move forward, tell the whole city council, then I'll let the mayor know that we're supporting.
In discussion next week, we will do our best to get an idea of, high priority, I think goes without saying, but how far we can get into this in terms of bonding. And the ultimate decision will be whichever council, has the bond put in front of us with our bond council's, recommendations
That would go
to.
through the finance committee or?
When it comes back in, unless it came in real quick, probably. But I think the questions will be more towards bond council, treasurer, the mayor's presentation and the whole thing. And again, the good part is, the important part is that, why we want to do it and why we need to do it. The good part is it won't involve a discussion with the city side of the budget, just with the overall bond cap on, that the city is using a lot more of these days.
And this was helpful too, actually, Michael. It was good to see this.
Frank, we
I'll
just
keep it for this.
get a piece for everybody for Tuesday night of the pipe. And David, if you have them, or if you don't, Ryan, can we get a copy of what was presented to us for all city councilors by Tuesday?
Sure, you want I can
If you
reproduce
could,
the
yeah,
package.
we'll distribute them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just so they can have them when we're talking about to refer to.
You want all the information in there, everything?
Yeah, the two packages you gave us, Darlene, the presentation, and then the write-up you just gave me on the carbon and we talked about the in lieu of tax. On a motion to comply with and recommend that we move forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Good job, guys, thank you. Have a good night.
And thank you to the patience of the audience. We're being as aggressive as we can be, and everything on this agenda is important. Moving, no order. The next item is introduced by Councilor Bartley. We're going to take it up. Councilor Bartley did very shortly before press time let our administrative assistant know that he had I don't want to say a family commitment, I don't want to say a family issue that he had to tend to. But what the order was introduced by David, that the Board of Health and the Animal Control Officer appear before the city to discuss the merits of the Thomas J. O'Connor Animal Control and Adoption Center alternatives thereto, advise the BOH to provide any reports or studies to the city, to the council in advance of the subcommittee meeting. There was a second order, Councilor McGee, I know was tied up at work. I was kind of hoping that he'd be here by now, but that the city invite Pam Peebles from the TJ Animal Control Center. So if we could take a motion to take both these up and see if we can get through it.
Motion to
On
take
that
up items
motion, all
4 and
those in
5.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Brian, can you and guest and everybody come on in and
Glad you brought that. Glad you carried it, not me.
Right back. I'm gonna get a coffee, I think.
Good evening.
Brian, thank you, and thank you, everyone. If we could do a quick introduction, I promise you, Councilor Sullivan is not going to bring out any demonstrated show-and-tell projects for this that I know of. I don't hear anything that's barking back there. But I think there's an impressive lineup here, and this is something that is always of interest to the city council. And Brian, if we could just go around and introduce everybody, or if you just introduce yourselves.
Go ahead, start.
Eric Velez.
Brian Fitzgerald, Director of the Board of Health.
My name is Hannah Orenstein. I supervise the animal control program at TJO.
I'm sorry, your first name?
Hannah.
Hannah, thank you.
Pam Peebles, the Director of TJO.
Pam, good to see you.
Good evening. I'm Helen Paulson Harrison, Commissioner of the Division of Health and Human Services for the great city of Springfield.
All right, welcome to the legendary city of Holyoke.
Thank you.
Brian, maybe you could lead this off. I think you had a conversation with David, I had one, and then I know what Todd's looking for. I know what everybody's kind of looking for, but we kind of need where we are and, more important, maybe where we should be or get back to.
The TJ O'Connor line item was cut in half during the budget hearings in June. Dave Bartley came to he was at our meeting, at my Board of Health Commissioner meeting a month or two ago for a couple different, he was there for one of his issues, and then he stayed, and we discussed the cut, and we discussed it with our board, and, you know, and the question was asked, why was it cut, why weren't we questioned on this before the cut? You know, we didn't know this was coming, we had no idea, and, you know, $70-something thousand gets cut from the budget, and so we talked to Dave about it that night, and I think he understands that, you know, it's something we need. To do without, we won't be able to function with all the animals and all the complaints we get in the city. It's just not possible. There's no other place to go. And I still haven't received one complaint. Me and Peter talked that night of the budget hearings, and he had, I guess he made one call. He can talk about it later, but the only complaints that I ever heard about T.J. O'Connor came from Dave. And he said it came from his constituents, but his constituents never called us. So I want that line item, I want the money back in there somehow.
Okay. Tonight's not about well, it is about
I
the
know
budget.
that.
But just for the record, the discussion that evening was in the middle of a budget hearing, in the middle of budget cuts that the city, I don't think the city council wanted to make, but some people were making them on, trying to reduce the deficit of what was presented to us by the mayor and arguments of what the deficit really was. I mean, we don't have to rehash that out. I mean, I think most cities it happens. You stole my line. When motions are made to cut something without bringing in the appropriate people, I think it's unfair to anyone that's asked to make the cut. I did not vote for that cut, but that's not tooting my horn or for any other reason than that was a budget discussion. Tonight, more important, I think what we want to do is get up to speed. Pam, you've been in before, and Commissioner, we welcome you, and Hannah, we welcome you. Tell us about T.J. O'Connor and what it does, let's just say what it does for Holyoke and what you do for, you know, your very important part of the Pioneer Valley services that you provide.
Thank you, and I don't think you've nearly received enough reading material tonight. I was just, if I may, going to spend a couple minutes just giving you kind of an overall summary of what TJO does in general, and then specifically for the city of Holyoke. The center was regionalized in 2003, and we've been proud to serve the city of Holyoke since then. We also serve the cities of Springfield and Chicopee, with Springfield being the lead city. We operate out of a 18,000 square foot animal control and adoption center at 627 Cottage Street in Springfield. As far as field calls, which I have to imagine are of pretty high importance to each of the council, routine field services are provided by TJO animal control officers from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 365 days a year. From 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., we go on emergency status, and an officer is called out if there is a human in danger or an animal in danger. That we have developed pretty clearly defined priorities of what's responded to overnight. The field services include response to injured animals, cruelty, neglect investigations, animal bites, animals at large, assist to police and fire. We're very, very proud to hopefully have done a good job for them to back them up in situations where they need to get in very quickly as first responders, but an animal may be prohibiting them from doing so. In 2017, for the city of Holyoke, TJO responded to 564 field calls and provided shelter for 386 animals, just about 400. TJ also assists the city in kennel inspections and license compliance as required by local and state law. And the animal control officers also assist in ordinance compliance for Holyoke, issuing citations for various animal violations, including unlicensed animals, unrestrained animals, animal care violations for those that are falling below the standard of care set by the state of Massachusetts, Mass General laws, and also rabies vaccination violations. TJO provides preparation and submission of animals to the state rabies lab when there has been potential human or animal exposure to the rabies virus. And additionally, TJO provides services for dangerous and nuisance dog hearings and respond to public information requests for bite and other reports as required by public records laws. I think there has been some question about what type of animals we handle, and dogs, cats, small animals, as well as wildlife are all handled. Wildlife, we are governed by some state law about where our responsibilities start and end, so there are some restrictions when it comes to wild animals that we have to defer to state law. We are governed by the TJO Supervisory Board. There's public meetings are held quarterly at the TJO Center, and currently the Supervisory Board consists of one representative from each city, with the Springfield representative being Ms. Galton Harris as the chair. At those meetings, there's really open discussions that has been set as the mechanism or the process that's been put in place for problems to be brought to the table to discuss and to iron out. And the current per capita rate is $4.35. That was from a contract signed in fiscal year 13, and it was a 5-year contract which expired June 30th of 2017. So as we stand now, we are currently without a contract and just basically on a kind of a week-to-week or as is until the cities get together and decide what is appropriate for a contract, if it's renewing the same one or what, based on the discussions that will hopefully ensue soon.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
It expired June 2017 or 2018?
It was 16. 16.
So this is the second budget that we've not had a contract? Our fiscal year, like most, begins July 1st. That's what I'm
Yes.
asking.
I thought it just ended.
The years
You
play
said fiscal
games.
13, so that'd be 18.
I have it right here. Beginning July 1/16 to June 30/17 is when the final, so June 30/17 it ended.
I thought there was a similar vote the prior year, but the money was restored.
No, it was never cut before. I thought it ended our fiscal this past June. I'm on,
It was. Because it's, you said
saying
fiscal year
17.
13,
Well,
would be 18.
payments and contracts are two different things.
No, it ended,
We're without a contract, but did we make payments?
yes, we
Yes.
did.
So the payment, the contract expired in 2017, but the city has made payments up until July 1st of this year.
That's correct. It's
Okay.
current. And that was in part of the, or in whole, I guess, to the TJS Supervisory Board discussions that Eric Velez sits on, and he brought it back to the powers that needed to hear that within Holyoke.
Can I ask you a question? Question through the chair?
Sure.
Who represents the city of Holyoke? Do we have an elected official on that?
Eric Velez.
We don't have an elected, excuse me, we don't have an elected official on that?
No, right now, there's the city councilor from Chicopee, Mr. Jim Tillotson, Eric Velez from Holyoke, and Ms. Colin Harris. The contract does allow for an advisory person, and currently that is unfilled from any of the cities.
Because I remember, I think it was back in 1999 or 2000, I served briefly on it. I was just on too many boards, and I backed off, and Kevin Jourdain came on, and he served on many years. I think on a board like this, where you're dealing with, I think it's important to have an elected official from each city. I'm not sure if you're an elected official or not.
I am anointed.
I don't know what that means.
I am appointed official.
Appointed, okay.
Is that by Dominic?
Yes, I've worked with 3 mayors, Ryan, Sarno, and Albano.
Nice.
My,
Know all three, and they know what they're doing when they appoint commissioners.
Absolutely.
what about, and you spoke about animals, and it seems like my constituents are dealing a lot with foxes now. And I don't know why. It seems growing up, I didn't see any foxes, and now in my neighborhood, there's a plethora of foxes that are running around. And I remember asking somebody in the medical field if I should be majorly concerned, and I described the foxes, and they said they're pretty healthy because the way they look and whatnot, so I'm not sure about rabies or not, but can you just address that?
Yes, it's, I strongly believe that we're going to see that increase as each year. Our development is taking up what is their home. So the further we spread out, the more they have to become more and more urban. So it's very common, not only with fox, but coyotes, bear. If you spent any time on social media, you probably noticed that, and also WWLP and Western Mass News have contacted us frequently for stories on bears in our backyard, fox, and yes, they are healthy. There's so many food sources, and this is a perfect home for them because there's food, plenty of places to hide compared to the woods or rural areas.
So should I be, when a constituent calls, should I be saying that, you know, it's okay, it's like a squirrel, it's gonna be fine, or?
Well, I think that's a call we will gladly take, and we're, I think, on the ball with that. So it's a routine call for our animal control officers to field and to answer, and hopefully bring comfort to the person who's concerned. Every situation's a little bit different. For the most part, we say let them be, let wild be wild. If that fox is in your backyard, can you take your dog out for a walk instead of using the backyard for a day or two? We recommend different exclusion techniques that can get them to move to the neighbors or beyond, so they're not in your home, you're in your area. But every situation is different, and really important piece of that is to talk about what that animal looks like and its behavior, because wild animals tend to have very rather predictable behavior, and it doesn't mean because one's out in the daytime that indicates rabies, but that is one of our questions, and each animal tends to follow a pattern of behavior.
Okay, well, those are pretty much the questions I have. I think maybe the reason and I can't speak for other counselors, but I think one of the things we do in budget hearings is we try to take out as much money out of the budget as we can. I'll give you an example. So like the law department, when you're talking about outside legal counsel, I love to cut that. I really do. I love it. You know why? Because now they have to come in and they have to explain why they're going to be spending the money on outside counsel. Now, can they do that prior? Not really, no. And so I love cutting that, and I love getting that done, and it does every year, which is great. And then they come in and they explain us what cases they have. Because if the money is in their line item, they don't have to come to us at all. They can sit there and they can give X amount of dollars to any settlement. So I think that's a healthy way to go. And I'm not speaking on behalf of any other counselor. I will support putting this back in. Do we have that in front of us tonight?
We have 2 orders, and that's a good question. I think whether it's Counselor Bartley's order, whether it's Counselor McGee's order, I think we could eventually recommend that we complied with the orders by bringing everybody in and make some recommendation like we did with the last issue in terms of, our next window will, in all honesty, will probably be when free cash is certified, which our auditor is telling me is gonna be soon. And then the mayor would have to sign off and get it back in front of us to approve it. So that would be, I think, our best bet.
I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Eric,
Yes,
what kind of animals do you see in the city of Holyoke? Because I know your predecessor, because I work in a building across from you, and I see the window of the Board of Health. And one day, a couple people I was working with were a little squeamish because they saw this orange and white thing moving around in a cage, which I knew what it was. It was a boa constrictor. All right, tell us what you get calls for and what you have to do.
On a daily, I get calls for all sorts of animals, wild and domestic, sometimes even injured and or deceased, that I quickly dispose of. With this contract being cut, I fear that none of these animals, domestic or otherwise, will have a place to go after the end of this year, unless we have some free cash to sort of take care of the remainder of the contract. Because there is no, essentially it's an all or nothing deal. We can't just utilize them for their shelter and not use their animals, or I'm sorry, use their officers. And or we cannot sort of say, well, you know, Eric's around during the day and you guys can sort of take care of nights and weekends. We can't say that either. It's an all or nothing deal. So I feel very strongly that this money should be reinstated. Sorry. And it was, the budget was 173 for the fiscal year. Essentially 87,000 was taken away. So yes, I see many animals. Getting back to your question, I see many different. Yeah, I say many different animals.
Any of that after the drug task force invaded a den.
Well,
selling drugs.
we've seen everything from boa constrictors, which are not illegal, to caimans, which are what? Caimans, which is a crocodilian. Essentially, it's an alligator type animal. So we've seen many legal and illegal animals in drug raids and such, and we've been very fortunate here in the city to utilize the contract with T.J. O'Connor to house our animals, and other, essentially what I was speaking to Dave, there's no sort of umbrella agency in the state, because he was concerned in making it seem as TJO only dealt with certain animals. And as you clearly see, that there's many more than just dogs and cats that they help us with. And what I wanted to mention is that there's no umbrella agency here in the state of Massachusetts. That's why we have the MSPCA, Environmental Police, Animal Control, Wildlife Specialist, just to deal with certain things that maybe perhaps myself or other agencies don't sort of handle, a black bear or something.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, and I don't know who to direct. Whoever wants to answer them is fine, but the first one, we've got this list here of Holyoke animal calls.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
But I'm looking at it, and the list is just populated with redundant. It seems to me like it's trying to make it a much more aggressive list, but I see the same call listed 4 times at the same time, 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 9 a.m., at the same address. And I see that in numerous spots throughout the report.
I can actually explain that. Yeah, no, go ahead.
These are all listed as separate calls, separate calls, separate calls, separate calls. is this just to populate a list, or?
So the way that our shelter software system works, when multiple animals are impounded from one address, it's going to list the activity multiple times. So you'll see assist with a house fire. The reason that's listed 5 or 6 times is because that's how many animals were taken from that address. So at the end of this list, you'll see the total number of calls is 602. So that is a correct number. This just lists those individual animals for each address. So understand that it does look like the same calls listed over and over again. It's because it's simply listing the number of animals from that property or that activity.
Right, so if I was to total, I don't want to go through this, but if I was to total up all of these here, it would be more than 602?
I would assume so, yes. Yes, if you were to count every individual one, yes, it would come up with more than that. But the number of service calls is 602, that's the total.
Because that's why I'm reading, Holyoke animal calls, and I see a bunch of them listed just multiple times, and it's the exact same call. HPD called suicidal man, caught last 4 cats for us to take, agree to render. So it lists that same thing, the same description 4 times. It's listing that same thing each time for each cat taken at that time.
Yes, because there were 4 cats taken from that property, and that's how the activity report is printed out.
Okay, but what it's doing is it's making it look like you went on 4 separate calls.
Correct.
In fact, it was only 1 call.
The service number at the end is correct. It's not counting those individual animals, it's simply the service number.
If the 4 cats were brought to the shelter, you'd have to feed 4 cats, take care of them, and maybe find them homes.
But it would only be counted as 1 service call.
1 service for that.
Correct.
Okay.
We don't have the ability to tweak this report, unfortunately, so it's pretty long, but, yes. Whenever there's multiple visits or multiple animals coming out of an address, you'll see it listed
Yeah,
multiple times.
Can anybody tell me what the percentage, the incidence of rabies in feral cats is?
No, I don't have that information. It is readily available on the Massachusetts government site, but we are seeing very, very little, although we're extraordinarily respectful of the virus and treat each animal that is symptomatic as it may be a rabies carrier. The incidence is very, very low. It's in part why we recommend the trap, neuter, and return of cats, because they're getting a vaccination into their system, and studies have shown that a single vaccine has protective effects for years and years and years.
Just to add to that, in Massachusetts, the rabies vector species that are of most concern, that are tested most frequently, are bats and raccoons, not feral or community cats.
Okay.
Adding to that, the only 2 animals that have actually had test positive in the last year are raccoon.
I think we're familiar with that, yeah.
2 of them.
I've had the pleasure of going with you raccoon chasing once. Yeah.
So you mean you haven't caught any bats?
No, we have. Just very little of them actually test positive.
So, as far as the feral cats go, when they're apprehended, are they, when there's a complaint about them, are they taken to the center, neutered, and then released back again? Is that what's going on?
That's correct. So TJO has a very active, what's known as a TNR program. We're very fortunate that we're a facility that's able to do that. Many shelters across the state are not. So when we receive a call about feral cats, or what we call community cats, they are trapped, brought to the shelter, spayed or neutered, rabies vaccinated, ear tipped, so they can easily be identified as community cats when they are released. And then, if appropriate, they're released back to the same site. Rarely we will not release a cat. We will humanely euthanize them if we're concerned that it's a cat that is very, very ill and is going to have a poor quality of life or is a rabies risk. But the majority of the cats, the feral cats that we trap, are quote-unquote TNR'd.
Because it doesn't say anything, allude to anything like that happening as they apprehend them here. I see them getting
This
fed.
report just offers the very first few words of an officer's activity. Each of these has a more elaboration to it, and tells us, we have a whole database that tells us the exact time and location and disposition of the animal. But this is just really a snapshot in each of those calls that the report captures.
And actually, if you do look on page 9, about halfway down, you're going to see a number of calls that say stray confined cat, and a number of those towards the end are feral cat trapping. So you notice it says check traps close them for the evening, and that continues on for the following few pages.
And what about the ones that are clearly in, I'm sure, violation of several city ordinances and all kinds of humane stuff? I mean, I see dozens and dozens of chicken reports, all right? Chickens being picked up, and we all know what that's for. They're not for eggs,
Correct.
all right?
Yeah, so-
These are for fighting. All right, what happens with those? Are they left with the owner?
No, whenever possible, and we investigate allegations of cockfighting or dogfighting, whenever possible, we impound those animals. We'll confiscate them and impound them. When we're able to, we work closely either with the police department or the MSPCA to prosecute an owner for animal fighting. Those cases can be very, very lengthy and very, very difficult to prosecute. But no, if we have concerns that an animal, particularly roosters, are being used for fighting, we're not going to release them to an owner.
Okay. Questions?
Councilor Thomas? Councilor Thomas?
Thanks for the information and the report, very thorough, and I think it's important. I, as Councilor McGiverin, did not vote for any cuts in this budget, and I think it's important that the public knows the amount of work that is done by T.J. O'Connor and by our animal control officer and the Board of Health, because you know, you don't think about it, all the things that happen behind the scenes, you know, with police calls and animals in the street that get hit, foxes in different neighborhoods, bears, and it's just hard to believe that our community could have this many calls. You know, I don't think the average person realizes that, and maybe when the cuts were made, thinking, do we really need this, you know, this money for the animal control? And it's clearly seen here that the work is done, you know, with the T.J. O'Connor, and you know, the safety of the public is paramount here. You know, so I don't know how we do it, but I'm very much in favor of trying to put this money back in and get in contact. Anytime I had any issues, I made a call to Eric or Brian that were taken care of. You know, not that happens every day, but people call us sometimes. What do? I have this animal here, or there's a dead skunk here, or a possum. How do we clear this out? You know, and the police department does some of this stuff, but we need our animal control because if we don't have that, you know, you're really hurting the public. You know, and it's the safety of them is really most important.
The other thing we do like to think about too is the effect animal control has on quality of life. So public safety is certainly our most important, but the quality of life when you have an incessant barking dog next door or a number of feral cats living out of, you know, a dumpster on a communal property. So it's something that we really resonates with us, and we want to listen to people's complaints about, and if we can affect change, be a part of it.
Councilor?
Yeah, thank you. So when you have any missing animals in the city of Holyoke, I know there's that Facebook forum, the Hell Holyoke, and people have been putting that on. Have you noticed that at all? Has that been helping at all?
You mean if you, as a Holyoke resident, are missing your animal or you found an animal?
Yeah, both. People have been putting it. It's a community forum, and people are putting either found or lost. And they, you know, one lady said she dropped it off at. You actually have people dropping them off.
We do.
This one lady said she dropped it off at the town's jail. Okay. Another lady, I was just reading the feed, and she was like, "Thank you," and she went and picked it up. So I was wondering if that's been impactful at all.
Social media has had probably our number one and most significant impact, both positive and negative, actually. But we twice a week post our found animals and the location they were found, and that's routinely shared. And we see missing dogs. Each city is jumping on to having a similar page. So we do notice that Holyoke sharing ours, and we're trying to do our best to share them. But Facebook has made a huge impact on getting animals home and getting them adopted and just awareness.
I'm in charge of the Hell Holyoke one, so that's why I'm trying to, you know, help you guys out. Thank you very much.
Got it.
I thought it was a setup.
A report I have here in front of me that I'd like to present to you guys is a number about more than 230 calls, and the outcome of each animal that was picked up and brought to the center. They could have been adopted, they could have been RTO'd, which is returned to owner, or fostered. So there's many different places where these animals can go, and so that you know, keeping the center with the city is very beneficial.
And can we have a copy of that, Eric?
We have.
Sure,
one.
We have it
absolutely.
In this package, okay,
have it.
thank you. And Hannah, is there any more packets that we could have?
You can have mine.
If you don't mind, we have 13, besides us, there's 13 total
Oh, we
city
can
councilors.
absolutely make more
Yeah,
copies.
I
get those
definitely want
to
to
you.
get one of Councilor Bartley. Is it in
I'd
the
also,
packet?
I'm going to take a look to see if I,
In the packet? No?
Is that the list I just went through with you?
I will,
Eric, is that in addition to these 600? Or is that included in there?
Everyone could be.
Okay.
If it's from 2017, it's included in that 600.
Okay.
Actually, this is for 2018.
Oh, so it's a newer one.
okay.
So, go ahead.
Councilor Sullivan?
So back to, you mentioned the price that we pay is the same as every other community.
that's correct, $435 per capita for Chicopee and Holyoke. Springfield is a lead city. We have a $1.5 million budget, so Springfield as a lead city covers the balance of that, which of course is great. And the $4.35 per capita is a fixed rate. It doesn't change even with extenuating circumstances such as replacing the fleet.
So Springfield isn't paying a per capita rate.
That's correct.
How much do they pay?
You have a budget, I did enclose, if you didn't notice, won't directly answer your question, but I'll try to get to that. The FY18 closed budget is included in here, as well as year-to-date FY19. So you can look at the balance of that, and I don't have it in my head, I could do the math pretty quickly, but Chicopee's population is just under 60,000, and Holyoke's at $435 per capita. You could deduct from that, and Holyoke would pay the balance, which is, I'm going to say, is about 1.2 million,
So
1.1 million,
that's about what Springfield's paying, 1.2?
right.
And so we're doing it on a per capita, but on 600 calls, we're paying about, not including the cost of our own animal control people and the resources from our police department, we're paying, on average, about $290 per call for every chicken, feral cat, and possum that crosses the road or doesn't make it across the road.
And that takes in account strictly the field calls, not the sheltering, the impoundment and sheltering the animals. A good number or a bad number of these animals, many of them arrive with traumatic injuries, and there are laws governing especially dogs and how they're handled that we need to make a stabilization attempt to keep a dog alive and find the owner. So the cost of that is never passed on. So whether an animal costs us $2,000 to stabilize or walks in healthy, that's part of the $4.35 per capita and has no effect whatsoever even on decision-making with the city. That's all held within our center to make the best decision we can for the animal.
Yeah, how much would they spend on keeping an injured animal alive? Is there a limit to how far you'll go before it's euthanized?
Sure. What the best way I can put it, and hopefully this makes sense, is that the city budget allows for room for us to stabilize the animal. We try when we're dealing with an emergency vet to say, we do say that you have a $250 where you can do what you can to stabilize the animal. After that, Hannah or I need to be contacted for next steps and approval for each animal. Once that animal is stabilized, if there is a good chance of quality of life and to have that animal go forward to adoption, which is our feel-good part, we have the Foundation for TJO Animals as a nonprofit, strictly fundraising, operated by a board of directors. They step in to take care of where taxpayer money arguably shouldn't go. And so they take over the getting that animal well to make the adoption floor.
Okay, so
Excuse me, if
using
I'm,
I kind of get it, 290, that's just a statistical average. Some can be a lot less and some can be a lot more, and it's not a good way to look at it.
Yes, it's a hard number to.
All right.
Commissioner?
if I may, the $2.90, did you say, that it averages out to be?
$290, not $2.90.
$290. So it's important to recognize that that includes the vehicles that we use, that includes the software, that includes the staffing, that includes 24/7 hours service. And so while it does appear, perhaps from a fiscal perspective, to be a large number, I think when you consider all of what goes into that, you would see that it really is a very fair assessment of cost.
Yeah, and I'm getting the picture. If we were to do better enforcing our own ordinances, if we were to do better educating people, if we had less feral cats, we'd still be paying the same price. That it actually, our cost per animal would go up if we did a better job.
Well, I think that each of those things that you discuss to achieve progress costs money. So to reduce our feral cat population, I'm sure there's...
I get it. What I'm saying is there's no practical way for us to reduce this. It's based on our population, not the number of calls. If we have twice as many calls, we're still going to pay the same. If we cut our calls in half, we're still going to pay the same.
I don't make the decisions about setting the fees, of course, but my belief would be that if the need for Holyoke went up or down, or Chicopee, that would be part of the discussion at the time of contract renewal, that what is the current need and what should that be assessed at?
All right, and that brings up my last, so we're operating without a contract right now?
That's correct.
Any further discussion?
Make a motion that it's been complied with?
Motion made and seconded, complied with. Could I ask that we recommend that the mayor renegotiate the contract and appropriate free cash transfer down the road to be reviewed by the full city council. But the immediate vote next Tuesday would be to, I hope, renegotiate the contract and get ourselves back in line budget-wise. Gentlemen.
Very good presentation.
Ladies,
Thank you.
Would you like 13 of these
If you could.
by Tuesday, you said?
Yes,
Yeah.
if you could.
It's
Well, we
easy.
have
You have
four of us,
Yeah,
so
so
if
less
we,
one.
9
Subtract
more
those.
if you could. Yeah. 9
Very
plus 1 for the jacket, so Ryan can do some reading in his spare time.
Really appreciate all your
Thank you,
time
gentlemen.
tonight. Thank you very much.
That's from Eric, for Dave and everybody. Joe McGiverin.
I will.
Dominic and I worked in the DA's office, I won't tell you how many years ago. But
I will.
He's a good man.
I actually was at city council for us on Monday night, so I did tell the mayor, I said, well, I'm gonna go to Chicopee for Wednesday. And he said, you really don't get enough of city council, do you? So, but I will,
Well,
thank you.
thank you.
Next time, tell me you're in Holyoke, though. That should be.
I did say hello. I said Chicopee just now, I'm in Chicopee tomorrow. So, take care.
Good night.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go a little quicker now. Item number 6 is the petition of Diego Munez Torres for a secondhand license at 247 Main Street. Take it off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Good morning. Please, come in. The microphones work with a button. If you see a green light, they are on. If you don't have a green light, press the button. If we could introduce ourselves, we kind of met in the hallway, but for the record, can we have your names?
Really? Already?
My name is Diego. Diego Munoz Torres.
Okay,
My name is David Rodriguez.
okay. And Diego, it's under your name, but can you tell us what the secondhand license petition, what you're looking to do with it?
I have the shop in Main Street, and we do video games, and we sell cell phones. So just buy, use video games, same thing GameStop does. And if someone brings a console like a PS4, the cops went to the shop. We have the RISP program. So every time someone sells me something, I get their license. Gonna set up a camera, so we take a picture of the person, put all the information, then send it to the to the police department it goes to, and then they check with the state.
This isn't happening yet, but,
Yeah,
once
but that's why we're,
hopefully, the license.
Would you keep a record of that?
we do, yeah, it's in the computer, so if we want to look at something or the cops come or whatever.
How long do you hold the item?
30 days.
30 days. Then what do you do with the item? Do you bring it somewhere to, like a flea market to sell it?
Right there in the shop.
Let's say if nobody comes in and buys it, so,
They can't. We have a room in the back. We set up big shelves. Everything's going to be tagged. And for 30 days, it just sits there.
no, but after 30 days. So, I mean,
Oh.
you're basically loaning out, or not loaning, but giving out money without maybe a possibility of selling anything?
No, we're not. That's the purpose of it. We buy to sell it. That's what a secondhand dealer.
It's a storefront.
Let's say if I bring down this microphone.
Yep.
And you give me $12 for it.
I grab your. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then, after the 31st day, you have it on your shelf and nobody has the need for this. So, I mean, you're essentially.
I mean, there's ways that I can go about selling the item. I can sell it in the store. I can sell it on eBay.
Oh, eBay too.
I can, we can do.
Okay.
But yes,
And
we'll get
just
stuck
note
with a
though,
lot of
Diego,
stuff.
we'll take your picture, Councilor Leahy, and when Ryan reports the microphone missing, we will know where it is.
Absolutely.
Good point.
That's why we have the system.
I
So
think I
if
just-
something
yeah.
happens.
Actually, by talking about that system, he answered most of my questions. Do you own the building that you operate out of?
I
does.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm renting to him, and we work together. I have a cell phone repair shop next door, so having someone selling cell phones
Okay.
would,
And I
benefit me.
trust you're up to date on taxes?
Yes, that's all paid.
Sewer,
Yep,
municipal, all that
yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
Because we do have to check that by
Yes.
our ordinances. yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 businesses there, and they're always renewing licenses, so I always have to stay up on my taxes and all that, so that's
And to
all.
get even the process of this, we had to pay,
to go
make sure that if any taxes are owed, we pay, or he had to pay.
This is just a question that we don't have to ask on this one, but it will be asked, is with 3 businesses, do you have off-street parking?
To have, well, it's 3 separate businesses.
Yes.
There's, it's supposed to be a no, but where the steam building is, they have a dirt parking lot.
Yes.
Which they allow us to use, but it's not really a parking lot, but that is,
But
they allow us
if
to
someone
use it.
could park there if they
Oh,
came
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
It's actually not a requirement of this type of permit, but in some cases, we do have to get into that. Any other questions of the council?
You do baseball cards as well?
No.
I
There's
think
no-
we
there's no
can.
money in that.
Yeah, we can with the secondhand dealer,
But we
but
wouldn't.
there's no,
There's no money in it.
There's no market.
there
Not
used to be.
anymore. Yeah. I have tons of them.
Same here.
No Babe Ruth?
No,
How come?
Subcommittee, but,
Hey,
Yeah.
I bet you that would be worth
Can I ask you
something.
a question since you're in front of us? So say if, I just watched a press conference today on Apple's new phones coming out. So say if when I get that, because I'm sure that I will, is it better for an individual to trade in their old iPhone, or is it better to go down and sell it to you guys?
It depends. They used to be awful with their trade-ins, but they're getting pretty good with them. But it used to be much better to sell to someone like us. Well, if it's some of the pawn shops and stuff really kind of get you, but we're pretty fair. But some of those trade-in programs now are pretty good. We actually sometimes look them up for people. If they come home with something that's too new or something like that they might want to trade in, which right now we tell them they can't. But when you look it up, they're giving $400, $450.
Oh, they are giving much-
Yeah,
oh.
yeah, for some of this stuff, you're like,
Okay.
wow.
All right,
Now,
thank you.
that's towards $1,000 phone.
Right.
1,400.
Well, the new one's 1,400, but yeah.
I make a motion to approve this.
Second?
Second.
Do you do anything with jewelry,
No,
coins?
no
nothing
jewelry,
like
no
that?
gold, no coins, no.
Antiques?
Actually,
Antique cell phones.
Some of those might be worth, so look it up, because there's some that are worth money.
It's a phone?
yeah, it's really weird. Yeah. Well, anything that's been thrown out in huge lots ends up being worth something when there's a few left. So some of those old flip phones, there's people that literally that's all they can use. That particular one, they'll pay anything. Yeah.
You're looking at one.
I still like to have my original Go phone.
Or the
Are they
BlackBerry?
still around?
The Blackberries,
Those were the best.
they're around, but you can no longer use any of the services. They've all
How
gone
can they,
down.
I mean, that was literally the best phone I ever,
People love it, but they come in, they want to hook it up because we sell phone service. You can't, it just won't work. Not on today's networks.
all right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This will go to the full city council next Tuesday.
So come back next Tuesday.
Vote will then be filed and registered with the city clerk. You don't have to be here next Tuesday.
Okay.
You're welcome to. But once the vote is taken, it'll be filed with the city clerk, and there is a waiting period. Anybody know the second-hand license? If you call the city clerk's office, Brendan McGee Murphy can answer that question for you, but she'll tell you when to come in and pick it up.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Right on, gentlemen. Thank you. Good luck to your business.
On the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Brian, we don't have it in front of us, the actual petition.
I think I have it down there.
No, no problem, just we write on it for nothing. And also, can you make sure someone does the check with the, the treasurer, the assessors, all that stuff?
Yeah.
To make sure everything's paid. Thank you. Moving as quickly as we can, item 7
Make a motion, to take item number 7 and probably number 8 off the
and number
table.
8 together. These are both requests for transfers. Item 7 is $1,050 from plumbing and gas inspector to building commissioner. And item 8 is $3,000 from pay plumbing inspector to plumbing inspections. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Damian, thank you, and thank you for coming down. We appreciate it.
Being patient.
You want to run through these 2 items for us? It does, because we are on TV.
Okay, so the first one is the COLA from fiscal year 17 and 18. That was something that was cut out and it had to be restored. And there was a separate order, I don't know if you remember, probably about 6 months ago, for a different amount. But and there was an understanding that this is something that's contractually obligated, but it had to be refiled under the exact amount. The other one failed.
Damian, I remember, but just remind everybody here and everybody, so we can answer questions on Tuesday. You're part of the Professional Supervisors Association, which is recognized by most mayors as a negotiating body. And although not all of us recognize that, most of us do and have voted on these appropriations would certify that. We did have, who's the president these days?
Jeff
Burkott before us earlier this year. And I think most of us know that transfer was a larger number. And we had a lot of discussion about that in front of the city council, where that original language actually goes back to 2016. If I remember correctly, the line item in your salary account in 2016 was $70,000. And actually, it might have been more.
It was more, but it was brought, I think the main point is 17 was cut to 70, 18, but contractually it's obligated 1.5%, so that's what that transfer is, 1.5% between 17 and 18.
Okay, and my argument was and I forgot to ask Jeff to come in tonight, not that, I think he's been in front of us once, but my argument was that particular language, that particular MOU, I think they called it, was ratified with the 2016 budget with this COLA adjustment in it. And once you ratify it, it reflects for the length of the contract, and that would be what we're facing this year is the 1.5%.
I make a motion, we approve it.
Motion made second to approve. Discussion, Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, this would be a housekeeping between 7 and 8. We're taking.
Hang on, I'll answer that.
All right,
Councilor Sullivan.
all right, so this is both 7 and 8. We're taking it from line item 12401-51105. On one order, it calls that plumbing and gas inspector. Then we have the same line item, and it's just called plumbing inspector. I just want to make sure we're not supposed to be taking it from a different line item.
And if you could tell us what position isn't or wasn't filled for part of the year?
The plumbing and gas inspector, and that's the same position, there's only one, so one plumbing and gas inspector, it's just the way they probably wrote it.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was.
And just, if we're asked, is this something that you will, obviously this is money that we're in September, that you won't need, but are you looking to fill that position?
It's filled, but it wasn't filled till about 2 weeks ago, I'd say. About 2 weeks ago, so it was vacant for the first over a
And the
month.
auditor has signed off that this money is available for transfer, so it's not needed for who's ever filled the position now, so we're fine there. That answer your question?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Just the question I had for you. This is housekeeping, right?
To me, it's housekeeping, but to the full city council, I cannot speak for them. And we have had, over this one particular contract, numerous discussions, mostly in the budget hearings
Right.
over the last
I
2
remember
years. And I can only report what I believe is, and what Damien is showing us and what Jeff Perkott showed us. It took a while to get Jeff in and to get the contract, the MOU in front of us, but we analyzed that earlier this year. So I think we're satisfied, I'm satisfied personally with the answers. So to me, it's housekeeping, but it may be more to the city council. We'll do our best.
I'll remake my motion to approve it.
Motion made second to approve, refer to full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. And plumbing inspections, what the $3,000 is going into that line item? That's to pay for plumbing inspections. Can you just remind us what that means?
That's to pay for the alternate, so we use the inspector from East Hampton, have for years, and so he filled in for, I don't even know how many months, but a good period of time. So, we have to, it's a balance. Every time another month or two goes by, we got him filling in, and we haven't filled the position with a full-time person. We're asking for the transfer from the salary to the inspectors, per diem kind of thing. So that's complete. So this is it. That $3,000 will cover what we owe him. We owe him some money and some left in there for the vacation time that our new employee may take before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, I know your predecessors have told us this. I'm sorry for not having the mic on. Your predecessors have told us this, you've told us this, but when an inspection, electrical, plumbing, is not filled, you still have to do inspections for permits. And you have to have someone that is certified to do it. So you can get someone from another community, it's kind of like contracting out, and I'm sure that sometimes we do it for other communities, is that,
That's right.
okay?
Yep.
All right.
Make a motion to approve this one.
All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Damien, thank you.
Thank you.
The drill, we'll do it Tuesday, make the recommendations to the full city council.
You don't need to be here, though. All right?
You're welcome. Thank you.
If he wants to.
Can we go right to Mr. McManus,
Yes,
which
sir.
would be orders, I don't know, Mike, you know what numbers they are?
CSO mitigation.
CSO mitigation is 12 and 13 is recycling. So we take them both up for discussion, we'll do them one at a time, but items 12 is the Mass General Laws, a grant for the Connecticut River CSO mitigation, and item 13, right afterwards, will be a grant for the Recycling Dividends Program. Again, we're looking to accept grants, set up accounts for the receipts and expenditures, and to do them properly and allow the department head to spend these monies. All in favor to take off the table? All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Michael, thank you. And I didn't put this agenda together because I was in a rush last week, so the reason you're 12 and 13, you can blame the guy sitting behind me, not me.
I am.
Want to run us through the CSO mitigation?
Yeah, so this is, it's grant money that we are getting from the state through the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. It's 100% grant, there's no match requirement. And it's part of the Connecticut River cleanup, so the state puts money in the environmental bond, and then that money gets shared between Springfield, Chicopee, and Holyoke as communities that are actively working to clean up the Connecticut River. We've used this grant money in the past to complete the Jackson Street CSO separation project for the previous 2 years. So we were able to have that project designed completely with the grant money from the state. And now we're looking to use the grant money this year and more grant money next year to complete the long-term control plan, which is the the guidance for eliminating CSOs within the city and complying with the Clean Water Act. Finalizing the long-term control plan is part of the administrative consent order that the city has with the state and EPA. And by doing the majority of the work this year and finalizing it next year, we'll be able to meet the time frame that the state has set up for completing the long-term control plan.
I know it's in here, but what is the amount this particular grant coming in, this go around? If you don't, at the top of your head, if you don't know, Go ahead.
160-ish, I think, in that ballpark.
For some reason, and this is not just on your grants, but when the auditor files these things, we get all the language, everything is there, the cited general laws, the whole thing, but he never puts an amount in front of us. We have to look into this case, 17-page package. But ballpark is 160,000?
Around that, yes.
Did I hear you correctly, or am I listening from the other night that a lot of what we're doing right now is the design phase for the next project?
What this would do is get us one of these books that says for the next 20 to 50 years, these are the projects that the city needs to complete in order to come into compliance with the Clean Water Act to stop the sewer overflows. And it'll look at sewer separation, it'll look at storage of the combined flows for treatment later, it'll look at satellite treatment facilities, it'll look at the cost associated with all of those, the impact that it would have to the sewer rate and the city's finances. It'll have timelines. It's the plan for fixing our CSO problem.
So maybe I should reword it and call it pre-design phase. That keeps us out of some immediate hot water, even though the inevitable countdown is on. Mike was before the ordinance committee last night, and a lot of this was, not this particular grant, but a lot of the CSO stuff was discussed. Any discussion?
Make a motion to accept the grant.
Second. Make a motion to accept the grant. There is no matching, and we will recommend that to the full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Recycling.
So I believe this is another grant that we received from the state. We applied for, I think it's $12,000, and we plan on using it to buy more toters.
Or what?
Toters,
What are those?
recycling toters, the larger recycling
Oh, okay,
bins.
okay.
Excellent. You won't believe how many people ask me how they get one of those. The last time we talked about this, though, we did start the revolving fund.
We did, and we've received one check from the MRF in Springfield for a little over $11,000, and we used that to buy, I think it was about 120 toters. And we received them a few weeks ago, and we're getting them out to people now.
Okay. We're going to be asked when we start talking this evening. I think we're going to start getting phone calls over the next few days.
That'd be great.
How does one come? Do you just come down and ask for one?
Call us, and we'll verify that you do put out enough recycling to warrant having a toter, and we'll deliver it when we can.
So 120 from the revolving fund, and how many from the grant?
It'll probably be 135-ish. And then with the revolving fund, I think the revolving fund was capped at a certain amount per year.
Yes, dollar-wise, yes.
Dollar-wise, I think it was 15,000.
Yes.
So we will get another check from the MRF because they're semi-annual checks.
Okay.
And at that point in time, we'll use another 4,000 to buy about 50 more toters.
And there is not ever been a waiting list for this. It's going to be.
There is a waiting list. There was a waiting list, and we've had some turnover at DPW, and the waiting list kind of went with the turnover. So now we're evaluating people as they ask, but we do have a paper list. But by all means, if someone feels they need a toter, let us know. And
Okay.
Try to
At one time, I know our recycling was measuring households with what they were before we had the wheels, with what they put out in their bins, how many bins they had, and if it was a consistent every other week recycling amount. which I think was a good thing, because it said, if, the persons that need the bigger bin, although I think most people are, and not just convenience, I think some of our elderly population, those wheels make it a lot easier for them to recycle, even if they're not gonna fill it up completely. So they're becoming available, we have our eyesight on it, and people just need to get down there and ask for one.
Pretty much.
More or
yes.
less.
More or less.
Okay. I don't want to put you on the spot. We're going to be asked a lot of questions. I want to give them the right answers. Any other questions from the committee?
That's it. Make a motion to approve it?
On that motion, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. I think the finance committee owes you to go at least first or second next time.
Second
Thanks.
that. Good job. Well done, thank you.
We don't speak for ordinance, they get there. Unless you put that agenda together, Ryan. All right, moving back to
Make a motion to take up item 9.
item number 9.
Has to do with medical claims, fire.
Yes. There's actually, if we can do 9 and 10 together.
Please.
Is 11
Second.
a repeat of 9?
Yeah, what about,
Ryan, is 9 and 11 the same item? It's the same numbers.
oh yeah, it is.
Okay, so 9, 10, and we'll dispose of 11, but we'll do it together. On the motion to take off the table for discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. I'm going to my phone because after a brief discussion with our new human resource, our new personnel director,
Hector?
I asked Hector Carrasquillo to email me this, and I went out and knew him, knowing that we had a very aggressive agenda, and hope that I can answer any questions this evening, and more important, if not, get the questions answered by Tuesday. Item number 51 is $83.33. What we're actually voting on is that monies from this year's budget can be used for services rendered in fiscal 2017. The $83.33 is a claim out of the medical claims of the police and fire department appropriation for fiscal year, I'm sorry, it's coming out of 2019. Out of fiscal year, I think he's got that mixed up, Ryan. No, we are in 2019, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, fiscal year 2019. And it's a injured on duty. It was a bill that instead of coming to the city through what should have been the workman's comp protocol, it went directly to the individual. And when that happens, I guess it happens kind of frequently, that bill has to be turned into the appropriate department and then brought to the personnel department to be verified that it's legit. Hector tells me that this $83.33 was legit, and the crossover over our change from when Kim Counter left and Hector came in, this bill got shuffled in the wrong place and was not paid last year. He's asking for permission to pay it this year.
Make a motion to approve it.
Okay. He did say that he would be more than willing to discuss, but it would have to be an executive session. The individual, I see no need to know who the individual is as long as it's been verified. On a motion to adopt and refer it to full city council, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. This one's even more simple. This is a $160 bill for advertising. This was the advertising that went out for the auditor's position, which the Public Service Committee will be taking up, I believe, very soon, on the 20th of this month. Again, this was just something that got mixed in the shuffle from last year. It should have been paid. He's asking to pay the legitimate bill from this year's monies. Motion, receive, adopt, refer to full city council. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. And item number 11, we're just going to dispose of as a duplicate. And one more? Two more? One more. 14. We got a email. Let me take it off the table real quick.
Make a motion to take it off the table.
It's a transfer, $4,288 to nutrition director, $1,288, utility person, $759, health services provider, $1,177, and the driver, $1,064. This was on our agenda as the negotiated MOU with, Ryan, you know the union number? I got it right here. With the UCFW Local 1459, known as the Council on Aging. These are the union members in the Council on Aging. The transfer in front of us would honor the contract. We received the contract in a timely fashion on August 7th meeting. We met on August 29th. Nobody was present. Ryan did contact, as is typical, the department, the new department director, the executive director, who was able to email Ryan earlier today that she had a prior obligation, yesterday, unable to attend this meeting. Unfortunately, being a new department head, I think we missed the communication of that we weren't just asking for her, but also the, president or the, whoever would, negotiate the contract on behalf of the union to show up. I was kind of hoping the law department was going to show up this evening, but I did get a memo on something else that appears that they were not available this evening. They did come in on Damien's, which wasn't a contractual thing this evening, but indirectly. So, with that in mind, I've briefed the contract. I think we could answer questions to the full city council, and if we,
Only a few changes, right?
it's
Just a handful.
the increases would be a 1.5% July 1st of this year, a 2% in July of 2019. These are calendar years, so the fiscal years are 2 out now. And the third fiscal year would be a 2% in July 1st of 2020. What's in front of us is the 1.5% for this year.
So make a motion to approve it.
Make a motion that we
Second.
approve, and if we can handle any questions at the full city council meeting, we will do so, or we will have the option of tabling it to get the answers for any city councilor's questions. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Good job, well done.
Okay, I penciled in 2 weeks from tonight, which is just the off, Jim, 2 meetings ago, we talked about trying to do finance committee on every other Wednesday.
Sure.
Does that work with you?
Yep.
And there's been a lot of other committees competing for Monday nights. And quite frankly, I think Wednesday nights gives us a week to get answers for the next, for the next pending full city council meetings. So I think it actually works out better for finance. So it's penciled in, not knowing what's going to be coming in next week. So we may or may not need it, but we will let you know if there's an agenda to be put together.
And not that, this does, I guess it does affect this committee too, but the interviews are the 20th for the auditor.
Thank you. That affects everybody. And I look forward to meeting, and I think it's great, Jim, that with your help that we got 26 candidates, through, and with Hector's help, through the personnel department. It's fantastic. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved.
Good job. 26. A lot of business.
Ryan, if you give me 2 seconds, I'll be right with you.
A lot of business.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
I didn't email the council yet to let everybody know.
Okay.
Because I think
Do
he
that
sent,
tomorrow?
yeah, he sent, just I think after hours, he sent like sort of a schedule. Okay. And, I think we wanted to say if we can start at 5:30.
5:30 is more reasonable because we get paid for 20 minutes or so. Good. And so, Joe, did you get that email? Do you have any people you want to add?
And this is my fault. I don't have a computer at home. We got a laptop.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to get on it to read all the resumes.
All right, we'll look at it tomorrow.
Ryan's got me hard copies.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna read them tonight.
Oh, okay, then you're all set.
So, and then if there's any additions, I know the ones that are there, they're fine. And then I think there was 1 or 2 other ones but I wanna be able to really read the whole.
Oh, yeah. Very hard to do on a phone.
Especially my size phone.
Yeah, no, it's difficult.
But don't laugh at it, it's bigger than yours.
You're gonna bring that pipe?
Yeah.
You should bring that pipe to that meeting.
Ryan, thank you.
Yeah, that was
Not easy. This is all 26 though, right?
We're all 26.
Okay.
It's worth 1,000 words.
So you guys gonna need a tetanus shot?
Yeah, the other side of it, the other side's the break. One side is cut. Like that's something I could handle.
Yeah.
They did that.
You know,
That was supposed to
If I'd have known you were doing that, I would have brought a dog or cat in for the TJ O'Connor.
I would have brought the dead possum down on the race.
All right, you guys have a good night.
Good night, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Hey, I will text you about, Westfield State.
Yeah, good, good. All right, take care.
We're definitely good both, right? Same team together?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, get your way, players.
That's not my question, Jim.
Joe, that's one of the things I do with the infrastructure. That'd be one of the static displays for the public.
Yes, yes.
It's
I'm
all
gonna
that stuff along.
keep this. I know I have a copy somewhere, but I don't know where it is. By Tuesday.
Sure, you'll bring it
This
back.
is the finance committee's copy, so I'll give it to you Tuesday night.
Perfect, sounds good.
And then they're gonna get you some more booklets from TJ O'Connor.
Okay.
You put on everybody's desk, and you can copy what Hector gave us. Same thing with the water department, I don't know how many of those.
He did give me one, I have.
All right, I mean, we gotta try to get as many copies from people who weren't here.
I can usually kind of scan it over. If they have a PDF copy, I can reach out to them.
Great, thanks, Frank.
Yeah, I've never been in the council chambers. No. Who's the gentleman I met tonight?
Paul McGiverin.
Paul McGiverin. McGiverin.
Right, he's, the middle one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's, been, as a council for, I think it's about 40 years.
Long time.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So this is what I do when they leave, and Ryan, they give you,
Oh, yeah.
this is the place where they meet. Yeah.
The computer's still on, the light's on, but nobody there.
Yeah, see, what happened, I told him, before you go home,
Yeah.
you let me know, because sometimes, what they want.
Yes.
So, it looked like, because, because some go up here,
Yep.
I
Yeah. Left it on.
the downstairs in the meeting room. So, I'm gonna call him. What do you want to do up there?
Gotta find what the electrical problem is.
That's not working?
Yeah, the pot's working, it's just one thing. That's right on time.
Yeah.
I worked on it Saturday night. I've been working so many hours, so the only time I can get. She says she likes to know when I'm gonna be here. I like to show her so she sees the trouble. And that way she knows.
What they do, they have meeting in the morning.
Yep. So it's gotta be clean. Why not?
I gotta check dates, make sure, the eggs off
Yep.
before I go home. So what I'll do, you're gonna go upstairs now?
I'm headed upstairs.
I'll give you a call when I'm done, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Got it.